basically no one trusts the mainstream media. Pretty much everyone thinks that the media is biased, but typically they think it's against them. People on the left think that the mainstream media is right-wing. People on the right think that the mainstream media is going woke. Who's actually right? First thing to understand, and I'm sorry to be the one to break this to you, is that no media is unbiased. There are like 50 different types of media bias that have been identified through different studies and different elements over time. Even the act of choosing what you cover as a publication is biased in and of itself. Nobody is able to cover everything all the time with equal weighting. So get the idea of neutral, unbiased media just completely out of your head. The other thing to understand is that the majority of media has one real agenda, and it's viewership and profit, regardless of which way they align. Their main interest is keeping you watching and keeping you biased. But with that said, there are different types of media bias that are used day to day to manipulate you and to make you feel some type of way. Here's some basic guidance for spotting. First thing to ask yourself, do I fit within the core demographic of that media publication? If you are, the odds are they're pandering to you because they know that when you like something that they say, you're more likely to buy it or read it again. For example, more and more young people these days are using social media as their primary source of news. Legacy media, BBC, ITV, Sky News, all of those are being more heavily consumed by an older generation. So a lot of the content that they create will be angled towards appealing to an older generation of people. Similarly, if you're a millennial, if you consider yourself centre left or left wing, The Guardian is going to be putting out more content that's trying to target you and trying to bring you in because it's benefiting from your viewership. If content gets you feeling some type of way, if it makes you feel emotional, if you trust it more, you're less likely to see the bias and you're less likely to think critically about what you're actually reading. So you've got them down. You know if they're pandering to you or not. You've clocked them. Here's what to ask yourself to see whether or not this content is designed to make you feel some type of way. Number one, how does it make you feel? Really easy way to get people's backs up is by using emotive language in the headline. If something contains the lines fuming, angry, aggressive, all of those things are going to make you feel immediately like you're going to get your back up, right? Similarly, if someone says heartbreaking story, if someone says devastated, it's all designed to make you feel emotional, which might mean that you're then missing the context of what's actually being said. And a really big one to look out for is if words are in quotation marks, because if they're in quotation marks, they're probably not real. This headline says, Prince Harry gives up as Meghan Markle embarks on a different journey. What does that make you think? That makes you think Prince Harry is going to leave Meghan Markle and they're going their separate ways, right? But if you actually read the article, it says that what Harry's giving up on is another commercial project. And that's only according to a royal author called Tom Quinn. A really good way to get a read on this for yourself is to read it out loud. Like, if you find yourself saying it in like an angry way or an upset way, or you find yourself doing this, it's probably not as factual as you want it to be. Next thing to ask is, how much is it relying on my own existing opinions to sell this story to me? I talked about this headline last year, but generally Daily Mail readers are not huge fans of the LGBT. This headline implies that NHS doctors have been told they are no longer allowed to even use gendered words in hospitals anymore. And it uses the word anger, it talks about taxpayer funded, because that's a really good buzzword for them. But it's not really what the actual content says. When you actually got into the article, it turns out it wasn't like guidelines had been issued to the whole NHS. It was actually just the findings of a research paper that had been ring-fenced to focus on inclusive language in the NHS and had just been published. This headline does not make you think that that's what that's going to say. We've got that. Check your own bias and whether or not they're trying to reinforce it, and keep an eye out for what's actually being said in the article versus what's in the headline. Last thing that I'll say on this one is look at where else this story is being covered and look at how it's being framed. If you look at the amount of coverage that the Daily Mail has done of the woke new Nike kit versus the BBC or Sky or ITV or The Guardian, you'll see that they have put a huge amount of emphasis on this. They're covering it again and again and again. What would they benefit from talking about the story this much versus these other news organisations that aren't interested in talking about it? Similarly, if something's got broad coverage from a whole host of different publications, look at the language that each of them are using and think about what do they have to gain from framing it that way. Because the truth will be probably somewhere in the middle. There are so many other examples of this and other things to look out for, but in terms of starting to think critically about what we read, I thought these would be a good few examples. Yeah, if you think the media is biased, it is. But it just depends in which way.